There are many tools that let you perform audits on mobile devices. In this case, I'm going to show you how the tool Android Rat works, which has the advantage of being an extremely easy to use and very effective tool. Before explaining anything else about this video, I want you to know that this publication and this information are only for educational purposes. If you know how these kinds of attacks are carried out, you'll know how to defend yourself better against them. Please do not try to do this on any type of infrastructure that is not your own or for which you do not have permission to do so. To install it, we're going to go to the GitHub repositories. Here, what you're going to do is copy the link that GitHub gives you and paste it into your console with the command git clone. Basically, what we're trying to do is simply create a .apk application so that it can run on Android devices. And we're going to run it as if it were a backdoor. In this case, I have my Kali Linux machine and a smartphone, which in this case is a Realme brand running Android. We have faced many types of malware, from those that take advantage to mine cryptocurrencies to those that steal banking data, all hidden inside shady apps that Google tries hard to remove from Google Play. However, much of the work to avoid this malware is to improve the security of your own system. Keep in mind that there will always be vulnerabilities or backdoors that can run within the Android operating systems. That's why, if we want to install Android Rat, the next step we need to run is the pip3 command. In general, phishing tools that you'll find on GitHub will have a .txt file called requirements, which holds all the installation instructions and the packages that Kali Linux must run for this tool to work. So, as you can see here, you run the command pip3 install -r requirements.txt and it will automatically download the tool that we need. One important thing you need to know is that along with that, it will download the tool ngrok. Ngrok is a tool that we often use to run on the internet in interface that we need to be public, but which is actually running only on our local interface. For example, if you have your Kali Linux machine and we want to run an application inside it, to download it, ngrok will give us the possibility for it to be public and appear on the internet cloud. The result of this lab, we only want to do it on a local network. That's why we run the command chmod -x to be able to run the extension Python. And that's why we write androrat. With that, we run the command python3 android.py -gu build GUI and the IP address that we have on our machine. In this case, I have the 10.1.40.9.99. Finally, I run the command gup with the port number and the application extension, which in this case will be called talker.apk. Not long ago, we saw how Google announced it has paid $2.9 million fixing many vulnerabilities that were open. These figures have been increasing since 2017, but it is a practice that has been carried out for more than 8 years. Androrat, which was discovered in 2012 by Roman David, started as a university project. And, just as we will see here, it was a vulnerability that allowed remote access and control of a mobile device. That's why, even if we run the command, it hasn't thrown an error because it doesn't recognize the argument. This is because it's still missing one of the switch options, in this case, the -o switch, which means APK name. That's why we run it again, and we already have the extension we want. If we press enter, Andro will start generating the application, and within a couple of seconds, it will tell us that it has been successfully built in the extension you can see here. As you may have noticed, what we need is to run this application inside the remote device, with the purpose that the victim, or potential victim, downloads this extension, runs it, and automatically a backdoor will be created. In 2015, there was a vulnerability called CVE 2015-1518 in the Linux kernel. It had been fixed quite earlier, but it wasn't until early 2016 that the problem was confirmed on Android. For the moment, they applied the monthly security patch, and since then, it isn't a problem that should worry us. However, Keep in mind that this vulnerability was for Android 7 Nougat. However, AndroRat has also made modifications in its code to try to bypass all these security fixes. That's why the only thing we have to do now is to make it public inside our network so this application can be downloaded by the potential victim. That's why we run the command python-m simple HTTP server and the port number, and we run it on all IPs. That's why, as you see here, you see the number 0.0.0.0. What we want in this case is that the Kali Linux web service can be available. Therefore, once the victim wants to download a file, they will be able to do it directly if we give them our IP address. Now that the interface is already created, we just have to run the command Python 3 Android Py shell, I all possible and the listening port. With that, AndroRat will automatically wait for a connection, and it only needs the vulnerable device to run the application that it will download from our own interface or web service. What about all the millions of Android devices that haven't been updated? Well, basically, they are vulnerable to malware, like the ones that take advantage of AndroRat. This is going to be a problem, obviously, since attackers, besides continuing to look for new vulnerabilities, also improve the old malwares. Even though they don't allow access to new mobiles, keep in mind that if you don't use in this case a good antivirus, the device will be vulnerable to AndroRat. In our lab, I'm using a phone with Android version number 11.